My name is Keith Delaplane. I was a professor of entomology at the University of Georgia in the United States, beginning from 1990 through July of 2024. So I had 34 very happy years working on research and outreach education for bee biology and beekeepers. I may be known to many of your clientele in the UK side of the world. I lived in York working with the National Bee Unit and my colleagues there, Giles Budge and Mark Brown and others, on a research sabbatical in 2012 and 2013. And while I was there, I gave a lot of presentations around the country and worked with your bee farmers and your hobbyists as well. So I think hopefully there's still a lot of people out there that remember my name and face, and I'm really glad to be talking to them about my latest book, Honeybee Social Evolution, Group Formation, Behavior, and Preeminence. And it was an effort of 10 years in the making. It started out, my original conception was to write a monthly column in American Bee Journal, which is one of our major trade journals here in the United States. And I wanted this monthly column to inform beekeepers about the background biology of things that they would see every time they get into a beehive and as they go through the course of a season, observing the natural history of the honeybee colony. And I wanted to give the beekeepers a very deep understanding, and not only of the behavior of the bees, but the evolutionary background. Why do they behave like this? How have they survived for so long over such a diverse swath of real estate on planet Earth? And hopefully, along the way, with that extra knowledge, beekeepers would have greater appreciation of their insect. They'd know better how to manage them. I really like to think that if a beekeeper is a good student of biology, that they will learn how to partner with nature when it comes to managing their bees and keeping them healthy, especially in this day and age of such new problems that we have, pesticides that are everywhere in our environment, and parasites that are exotic and evolved on different bees in totally different continents that we now have on our European honeybee. How can our European honeybee cope with these unprecedented problems? Well, I think we can look to its long evolutionary history to see how it's coped with many new problems over its past, and see how and where we as beekeepers can partner with those processes. It's a study of evolution, how biology is so malleable, how organisms and ecosystems are so changeable according to the new stresses and realities that come their way, how they adapt and how they continue surviving. It's inspirational. And the honeybee models this. Another real particular that I drill in this book is that social evolution, insects that live together in colonies like ants and wasps and bees and termites, this is not just some quirky little backwater of biology. We are learning more and more that all of these processes involved in evolving social colonies of insects are replicated at the grand scale of evolution. All evolution ultimately is social evolution. I guess to kind of give you a summary understanding of that, consider how at the micro level, nucleotides come together to form those famous nucleic acids, DNA and RNA. Well, that's a form of bundling, the lower level into the higher level. Well, it doesn't stop there. These nucleic acids of DNA, they get bundled into bigger molecules, and we call them chromosomes. And then chromosomes get bundled together into cells. And cells bundle together with other cells and form a multicellular organism. And then finally, organisms bundle together to form superorganisms. And at each one of these transitions, there has been sort of a business transaction take place. The lower levels have to agree to give up their genetic autonomy. I'm not just a lone cell floating around in the sea. I have now joined my fates with other cells, and we now reproduce as a unit. And the honeybee colony replicates that. We see individual organisms like worker honeybees that have subordinated their own selfish genetic interests to come together as a super colony. And the really cool thing is this happens even at the organismal level, like you and me and other animals and plants and fungi. Our cells come together, our individual cells give up their own autonomy to help the organism survive. And so that dynamic happens all up and down the hierarchy of evolution, and the honeybee models that better than any other organism that I can think of. So I like to think that we as beekeepers have yet one more reason to love our insects so much. It makes honey. It pollinates our food. It gives us a lovely weekend diversion where we can rest from our week's work and chill out and enjoy our hobby. And on top of all that, they model how all organismal life evolves. And that's just really exciting and relatively new to our understanding in biology. Biology has a somewhat regrettable tendency to reduce things. We call it reductionism. We think if we reduce a system to its most simple parts, that we will fully understand it. And we're just now realizing that that's a little bit of an impoverished way to come about biology because we're appreciating more and more the interactions and the interconnectivity and this process of social units coming together to form bigger and bigger and bigger units. We're beginning to appreciate that more. So this book is kind of an antidote to reductionism. It's an antidote to simplification, and it's a celebration of complexification and how that happens all up and down the chain of natural history. So that's a good summary of why I think this book is important. I believe my book is important not just to beekeepers for appreciating their insect. I think it's very important to a broad clientele of nature lovers, science consumers, people who are just interested in how our world works. And it's yet one more reason to just love the world that we have, to appreciate it and cherish it, and to do our best to be good citizens of this world with all of our sister species out there alongside with us. So it's a celebration of life. It's a celebration of how all of us, including human organisms, got to where we are today, modeled in the charismatic honeybee. In my book, I make a comparison, a simile, so to speak. I talk about imagine that we're out walking in the woods and we happen upon a deer and her fawn. And those moments kind of capture us. We're caught. We're instantly caught in this moment of intimacy with nature. We're kind of observing nature the way it really is. We feel that way when we encounter an observation beehive. What child is not instantly mesmerized when you pull off the cover and there's the bee, like, wow, you can just see their faces, turn radiant. I think what we're perceiving when we look inside an observation beehive, we're seeing how an organism really works in its natural state. The deer and the fawn are nature happening in its natural state, but in each one of those cases, we can only peer so far into that. We see the deer, we see her fawn, we see the habitat that she's living in. But when you look into an observation beehive, it's like seeing the cells that make up the deer and the fawn and the way those cells are interacting. We're looking at a organism at the cellular level because the worker bees to the colony are analogous to the cells in an organism. So that's the level that we're examining the organism at when we're peering inside an observation beehive. So it is a subtle distinction, but it's an important distinction. We're talking about how the social interactions of our cells resulted in a body made up of multiple cells. The superorganism models that with organisms who come together and form a superorganism. And those evolutionary impulses are the same. And I think that's a big important theme in my book that I think a general audience will be wowed at I was wowed at it as I was writing the book and synthesizing all this research. It's a beautiful story and quite staggering to think that evolution is economical. When it finds things that it just recycles them again and again and again. Evolution is such a beautiful worldview for this reason, in my opinion, because you don't have to debate about it. You don't have to compare opinions about it. You don't have to interpret data about it. Evolution is evidence of simply what works. You don't have to question it because it patently in front of your eyes exists. And it exists, this organism and this system, because it works, irrespective of our or anybody's opinions of the matter. So evolution is very comforting, I find. It's a comfortable basis for a solid and dependable worldview. We can look at evolved systems and hey, they obviously work because they exist. And I find that comforting. It's interesting. You mentioned earlier in our conversation too, Richard, about how different world religions and traditions have repeatedly used the honeybee as a motif. I think this just shows that the power of intuition of a lot of the ancient faith systems to intuit these greater truths. Um, and the honeybee is a ready and willing candidate for that. And this book talks about those illusions at touchstones throughout to keep people's interest hooked, regardless of their level of technical expertise in the biological principles. I'm pretty impassioned about this book and the education that it gave me in 10 years of really immersing in it. I've been a research scientist, my whole adult life, but to spend the last 10 years of my working life synthesizing all this into a book was was a tremendous experience of personal growth. And I came away with more than just a pragmatic appreciation for the honeybee, but bordering on a spiritual appreciation of the honeybee because it was just so beautifully modeling the importance of cooperation and altruism and conflict resolution. Far too often in modern history, evolution has been caricatured and falsely parodied by its detractors who, for various motivations, don't like evolution and want it to be de-emphasized in our society. And the parody that's often put out there is the survival of the fittest, brute selfishness prevailing. And there's some truth to that. Like all mischaracterizations, there's some truth to that. Like all mischaracterizations, there's always some truth mixed in with the lie. Evolution is a lot about selfishness, how genes selfishly compete. I want to reproduce. But oftentimes, the best way to compete is to be a good cooperator. A gene won't get very far if it's really super selfish, but if it bundles with other genes and they cooperate together, then they survive better and the survivability of all of them goes up. It's kind of like rising with the tide in common. And that story of the preeminence of cooperation far too often is neglected in the way we teach and talk about evolution. It is equally, if not more, a story of cooperation, altruism, and conflict resolution more than it is individual selfishness. And that point is a big point that transcends biology and needs to be heard and appreciated and understood up and down our chain of information consumers as responsible human beings. And this book, I think, is a entryway to that. So for this reason, I encourage not just beekeepers to buy Honeybee Social Evolution, but to buy it for other people in their lives who are science literate and appreciate the natural world. There's a big message hidden inside this book about pages and pages of honeybee biology. The theme keeps bubbling up. The importance of altruism, the importance of cooperation, the importance of conflict resolution. And here's how the social insects have done it over and over again. There's some lessons here for us. And I think the book deserves a wide hearing. And I encourage your listeners to rush and go to Northern Bee Books and buy their copy and buy copies for gifts and for their friends and certainly every beekeeper in their life and every science lover in their life.